A pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back to films I should have talked about years ago. And now, let's go ahead and get on into something different here. Something that I probably should have definitely talked about years ago. As you probably already know, Jurassic World has in fact been the reboot series for Jurassic Park. Today I might as well go on ahead and talk a bit about Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, the sequel to Jurassic World, and the second of what's about to be a trilogy because, well, you know what? Next year, we're going to be getting ourselves a third Jurassic World entry, Jurassic World Dominion. And it won't be released until next year. So, you know what? It's still fresh in most people's minds right now, and the timing seems to be just right for me to talk about this before this even comes to mind. But anyways, Fallen Kingdom does have a whole different feel to Jurassic World because I've seen Jurassic World in theaters back in summer 2015, and it sure did hit pretty hard, in most ways possible. It really did bring quite a big message to any hardcore Jurassic Park fan out there like myself. I was so captivated by something like this. The fact that they were able to reboot the series 14 years after they released the third Jurassic Park entry, and with all that time that had been spent, who even knows what we could expect in Jurassic World Dominion, because when it comes to Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, it's a whole different feeling. Sure, the reboot did get quite a lot of pretty amazing reception, mostly due to it having a good budget to work with, an impressive cast with members such as Chris Pratt, Bryce Dallas Howard, B.D. Wong, Justice Smith, pretty much. In this sequel, however, though, it does carry on the majority of them, but believe it or not, it also brings back the character Ian Malcolm, whom you probably remember from the original trilogy between 93 and 01. And of course, they had to bring along Jeff Goldblum for the role. So it's a good idea, pretty much, to have the same actors brought along throughout the course of the entire series that's run through to keep the exact roles as close by as possible. Because, of course, Ian Malcolm would be a whole lot different if there was somebody else playing that character. Well, anyways, in this exact scenario, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom takes place a few years after the destruction of Jurassic World itself, after the rampage of the Indominus Rex and various other things that had happened throughout the course of the first film. The second film does, in fact, star the likes of Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard returning to the island to find a volcanic eruption taking place. They rush in to grab as many dinosaurs as they possibly can, but unfortunately, not all would survive. And then, of course, they'd have to live with the fact that it's going to be a whole new world for them. A whole new world for all the dinosaurs to be a part of. Knowing that a volcano had pretty much destroyed their world, I suppose that's probably where the name Fallen Kingdom had come from, pretty much. A volcano destroyed Isla Nublar, pretty much. So, in this exact case, I do tend to find it to be rather justifiable for the subtitle being there, but on the other hand, I'm not really seeing a whole lot take place, because couldn't they have saved that for the climax, pretty much? Couldn't they have, found the bad guy who was responsible for triggering a volcanic eruption, or an earthquake that would lead to a volcanic eruption, and then, of course, the volcano would, of course, turn Jurassic World into a fallen kingdom? Well, I suppose the joke's on me there, because, well, it could probably play out differently. Because, believe it or not, this film actually does go on a certain high mark that not many people were expecting to take place, and not many people were caring about. That's just because a lot of people tend to overlook the values that a sequel truly holds. When you take a look at sequels to franchises of all sorts, like Star Wars, Toy Story, Psycho, and Friday the 13th, there really is a lot that you can look forward to seeing. Franchises are meant to be bigger and better than ever with the adaptation of sequels or reboots or television show spin-offs and whatnot. All sorts of media is played upon by these different outlets. Just to give you an idea of what it would be like to continue the story or at least branch it off in a different direction. Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom was released in 2018, made for all time. Just like all the other Jurassic Park / World entries we got so far, there was no exception. It's a timeless classic. The franchise itself has been around for not even 30 years, yet it still is one of the greatest that Universal has ever put upon the entire world, ever in history. It may not be like other unique classics out there, like Dracula, Frankenstein, or The Wolfman, or anything else like that. But darn it, it really is quite a unique masterpiece in itself. Fallen Kingdom probably would not be considered as good as the first one, just like how Ghostbusters 2 was certainly inferior compared to the first Ghostbusters, or when you take a look at how amazing the first Psycho film was compared to the other 3 Psycho films that came along during the 80s. And not to mention, the first 6 films of the original Star Trek and the first 6 films of the original Nightmare on Elm Street in comparison to their rebooted counterparts, which would show up many years later. There really is a lot of value to it. Not to get off track, but Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom certainly does continue on quite a high note. They actually bring in a new dinosaur called the Indoraptor. This thing, you could think of it being like the Utah Raptor. Large, menacing size, complete with terrifying appearances and intimidating factors of all sorts. Some rather scary things to be put inside of a Jurassic Park / World sequel by any means. But when you take a look at how the original trilogy itself was like back in the 90s and early 2000s, Jurassic Park itself had a lot of reasons to be terrifying, a lot of reasons to be realistic, because that's just what you get with such incredibly high standardized award-winning effects. Stan Winston had a huge thing going on with creating ginormous life-size dinosaur animatronics that cost millions of dollars to build and to even use on the set. But in comparison though, with the CG that you can get in the Jurassic World films, you really have a huge level of mileage, versatility, and creativity to work with. CG has done so much better than what original practical effects could. They're made to look better and sometimes even feel better if you know how to do it right. But believe it or not, they actually were able to recycle some of the same old classic animatronics and other effects that have been used in the original trilogy, especially in certain shots, which are pretty obvious to tell apart from the scenes where there are CG dinosaurs involved. But in the end, this film really does pave the way for a sequel. It's a bit of a cliffhanger, and maybe something that could be a spoiler, especially to some who have still not been able to see it yet, especially because a lot of people still overlook something like this. I, of course, practically overlooked something like this, but now, when I was able to get an opportunity to see this for the very first time, from start to finish, not including all the moments where I've seen clips of it on YouTube, well, I feel a lot different about it now. I was 19 in 2018, and I'm 22 in 2021. It's a big, big difference between only 3 years from the date the first ever release of the film came by to the time where I'm now talking about it here in September 2021. Quite a while between both times. But you know what though? It's not just a big difference between how I feel about the film, but it's also a big difference about how life itself had taken place. 2018 was a huge thing going on in my life. I graduated high school. I had tons of trips out there across the country. I visited so many states I never thought I would visit. From Ohio and Michigan to Kentucky to Georgia and many others. All throughout summer 2018. And being that it was the fact that I would never be able to get to college, that also was kind of upsetting. Well, anyways, knowing that Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom probably won't be as good as the first film, and maybe we'll see what happens when Dominion gets released next year, I'm going to go ahead and give Fallen Kingdom the scoring of 7.7 out of 10. So not necessarily the highest point that we could ever be in, but still, it actually does seem like we might have some hope. Hopefully we will see some great things take place with this third film. And I can't really say that I'm willing to watch it in theaters after all that has happened over the past 2 to 3 years, but who even knows? Maybe I might just work up the courage to do so. And also getting to know the fact that a lot of other changes have had to happen in my lifetime, well, that almost does make me reminisce about the many times I've had to go to the theater just to watch certain things that I would never be able to otherwise. Well, you know what? I'd say this was a pretty good topic after all, but I still have a lot of other things I'm going to want to talk about soon. So if you want to see more go down on my channel, then make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.